progress on committing to an environmental assessment for possible alternative alignment. So with those two tracks in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and he's going to walk you through where we are now. He's going to first talk about the current alignments, other alignments, and then talk about some of the intersection improvements and other traffic calming related stuff that we'd like to incorporate into the design to address some of the concerns that we heard at the last meeting. With that, I'll turn it over to Michael.
Mr. Spencer, before you turn it over, could I just share with everyone, please sign your name and as well as your address when this roster comes by, please.
So we do expect our partner colleagues to be here. They're here yet.
Well, yeah, thank you, and thank you all for having us. You know, as Jim was saying, we hope to show you some new things that we've been working on since the last time we met. I wasn't here the last time we met, so I assume there may be some new faces in the crowd as well. So we still just want to give a little bit of background on the trail, what it is, and why we're here talking about it in the first place. Is there anyone in the room who's not familiar with the Metropolitan Branch Trail? Okay. So the Metropolitan Branch Trail is an idea that's been around probably since the 90s as a bicycling and pedestrian trail that would connect Silver Spring to Union Station along the old, what was the Metropolitan Branch of the B&O Railroad. Most of that follows along with the red line. We've been constructing it pretty much going from the south to the north. We've got a big chunk of it built, basically between Brookland and Union Station. What we're currently in is the design phase for the next phase of construction, which would construct the trail north of the Brookland area. So what we have here is a section of the trail that we're designing now. The southern section in blue connects up from Brookland to the Fort Topham Metro Station. And we have the dashed orange line, which is the area in Manor Park that we're really focusing on tonight. We're going to get into some of the details of that. And then further up, once it connects to Blair Road, follow the Blair Road up towards Tacoma. You can go on to the next slide. So as I was saying, this idea has been around for a while. We looked at it as DDOT in 2005, and we looked at some of the ways to connect the trail through this neighborhood in Manor Park. Some of these, the line in yellow is a lot of what we're looking at tonight. The blue line is some of the other ideas that were around at the time in 2005. And then in 2010, we studied this in an environmental assessment. The environmental assessment is a process that's really designed to look at the different alternatives, ways of doing things, ways of building the trail, and seeing what are the environmental impacts of doing this. And at that time, in 2010, in this area, we looked at two different trail alignments. One that went up First Place and connected over to McDonald before going on up to Blair. It looked at some different alignments for taking the trail around the community garden. It looked at keeping the trail closer to the railroad tracks in the woods. So those are some of the things that we looked at in 2010. This was a partnership effort with the National Park Service. Most of the lands and woods closer to the tracks belongs to the National Park Service. So we're looking for their sign-off on anything that would impact their property. There were a couple things we didn't look at that time, which I think have come up at previous meetings here before. Some of those things are avoiding the community garden entirely by building either a bridge or a tunnel under New Hampshire Avenue. That wasn't something that was looked at the time. And as Jim mentioned, it doesn't mean it's not something that we can't look at in the future. Let's go to the next. And then I think you should have handouts of this as well. And we've got Ms. Powell, did you put this together?
Yes, I have an updated version.
Okay.
But it's basically
Another alternative alignment that was not exactly what was looked at in 2010, but is something as far as the trail route that would offer some benefits to bicyclists by being much like the rest of the trail and keeping it closer to the railroad tracks. But it is something to keep in mind as we talk about the different solutions and the next steps. Go to next. So I think kind of the key question that you had asked for at the top was what has happened in the past year? What has VDOT been doing? So we have been in the design phase. So this is where we're starting to really get into the details, whereas before they were just lines on a map. Now we can kind of see where the street markings would go. So the first thing this is how we're proposing the trail to come up out of the Fort Totten Metro and onto Riggs and cross Riggs at First Place. This is something that we heard from the community. There's a lot of concern about traffic exiting the school, kids crossing Riggs Road. It's a very busy crossing. So one of the things that we're looking at doing here is putting in a traffic signal to make it easier for people to cross Riggs Road and go to and from First Place.
Are you saying First Place or First Street?
I'm sorry, I think that's a good correction. First Street. Thank you. As well as what we call sharrows, some shared lane markings, which would keep bicyclists in the street, sharing the street with traffic. One of the other things that we heard from the community is that there's a concern about cut-through traffic on this street. People coming from New Hampshire trying to get over to the metro station. So one of the other things that we're proposing for this street is some speed humps that would slow down traffic and hopefully reduce the amount of cut-through traffic that you've been seeing. That's kind of our first kind of close look at Riggs and First Street. I think the next one is the intersection right out here that I think a lot of you would have interest in, and we'd love to get your feedback and hear your thoughts about this design. So some of the key elements of this design is that it brings the trail up First Street where it turns into South Dakota and then crosses New Hampshire. One of the things that we heard from the community was that there's interest in a signal here because it can be difficult to get out onto New Hampshire Avenue from the church. If that's the case, let us know. If we're off track, let us know. Well, one of the things we think that would do is that it would help people get out from McDonald Place and onto New Hampshire Avenue. We also think what we included in the design here is moving the curbs out a little bit further, closer to the intersection. That would give us a place to put do not enter signs because it is a one-way street running this way. We've heard that there's complaints about drivers coming the wrong way down McDonald Place. What this would do from South Dakota, keep the bicyclists in the street with what we call the shared lanes. We would install a new signal, as I mentioned, and then bicyclists or pedestrians using the trail would be able to cross New Hampshire and continue on McDonald Place with what we call a counterflow bike lane. So for all intents and purposes, the McDonald Place street would continue to run this direction for cars, but bicyclists would be allowed to use it in both directions. And what we would do for that is put a yellow stripe down the edge of the on the street to create a small lane for bicyclists. We don't think that this would have any impact for parking on McDonald Place or on South Dakota, kind of right around the corners here around the church. We think that parking would stay the same, but the added benefits you would get would be from the traffic signal. Leave anything out about that?
No, you got it.